Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Zan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm awake, I'm alive, I'm refreshed.
Have your coffee?
I got my coffee in my Ars Amorata cup,
Very
ready
good.
to go with
Brand,
my
on brand.
straw. I drink my coffee from a straw because Deanna's making me whiten my teeth, so I have to be.
Still keeping them pearly white.
Yeah.
Good. With By the way, I want to thank our listeners and viewers and commenters because we've got a whole stack of different themes and topics right now. So thanks for sharing your reflections, your goodwill, your support for the show. And I've got a list of 9 or 10 different topics. So you've given us stuff to chew on for quite a while. By the way, Zan, I think it's one of the reels that was cut out of our last episode where you talked about quote unquote the pussy snob and picky men. This seems to have blown up and had quite a lot of controversial debate on it. So
Oh, that's good.
maybe we'll go into that another time. A few people seemed triggered. A few people were really supportive about what you said. So it seems to be a good 50-50
That's good.
discussion.
I like that.
But out of all the questions, and by the way, we've got a lot of themes here that I think we've given some clear words and some coaching on in the past, and we will do again. I think we'll make an episode about most of these things because it's good to have a freshly worded resource out there for people. So we've been asked to give opinions on cheating and infidelity. Zan,
Uh-huh.
your longevity protocol. We'll do a special episode on that at some point. The nature of self-acceptance. One really good question, which we might do next time, which is how do I, balance my desire to love and protect my family, but also go off into the wild and have a sense of adventure.
Hmm.
So we've got some good themes. We're going to get to these over future episodes, but I'm drawn out of everything we've received to ask you the question that I think probably is most in the unknown or emerging edge at the moment. And you've mentioned to me in passing that some of the conversations that you've had on your travels have been revolving around this topic. And so I thought we could flesh this out in the podcast. You say you like it, put me on the spot with a question, right?
Yeah, I don't know no
Make me
idea what we're
think on the
talking
fly.
about today.
So this comes in from Cameron, and he asked about the role of male and female relationships in the evolution of human consciousness. That's what his question is about, i.e., and I'll just read this out fully so you can, yeah,
Okay, let's
start
go.
thinking your response. I've got some things to throw in this as well. But what is the role of a healthy relationship in the current chaotic earthly paradigm? And are we stronger together?
That's the question.
Another question. Another question occurred, and it's to do with the difference between need and desire. Having periodically spent a year or two or more alone, no lovers, and currently over a year since my last lover connection, I really don't feel I need a woman in my life, but I do desire one, yes. But the real question here is the role of male and female relationships. What is the role of a healthy relationship in the current chaotic earthly paradigm? And are we stronger together? Bearing in mind that this is coming from somebody who seems to have spent a good bit of time alone
Alone.
over the last period. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting thing. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like I've been writing about this
Yeah.
a lot. Like if you ever followed Ars Amorata for any stretch of time, or what Jordan and I have been talking about, or what we've been doing, or what our whole focus is on, it's bigger than the conversation of men and women. I mean, we're known for the conversation of men and women, but it's a bigger thing than that. It's a concept of mystique and myths and rituals and all of the reclamation of concept of beauty. However, we've never strayed from the foundation, which I believe that all, which directly to his question, which I believe that all of this reclamation, this rejuvenation of society will be stemmed from, which is man-woman relationships. So I talk about the concept of beauty being restored on earth through the mechanism of restoring the relationship between men and women. So that's not going away. We don't become a business entity or
Hmm.
political entity. We're still talking about relationships. So relationships is the foundation which will grow, um, in my opinion, which will grow this spirit back and restore something that we've lost. So and so you need the men to be strong and vivid and vivified and have autonomy and direction and focus, and you want the women to have the exact same thing. And right now everyone's unfocused, unmoored. Everyone's happiness is contingent on other things. Everyone's fulfillment is contingent on the world not, treating me badly. Relationships are suspicious. And to restore that equilibrium and that balance it requires, it requires both sides to come to some reclamation of their equanimity, I guess you could say.
Mm.
So I mean, yeah, just kind of briefly, just the overall strokes. And you talked about desire and neediness. I'm writing about that right now. And what an incredible thing desire is. My thesis, and I'll get attacked for this, but it's true. The number one thing that women cannot resist, the number one thing is true desire. Every woman is drawn to that desire, and they wish they could be the one to fulfill it. They can't because they're married, their boyfriend, etc. But they wish they could be. That's a blanket statement, and people say, "Well, I'm not like that." Well, I get it, but I say a lot of blanket statements. I have a lot of absolutes in my thinking.
So I'm just mapping this out here on the piece of paper, but also I'm just going to recap because you put some interesting things on the table. First of all, it seems like there's maybe two different layers, for want of a
Okay.
better word, of purpose or overall aim or intention. One is to restore something on earth that has been fundamentally lost, restoring beauty,
Yeah.
restoring a sense of grace that we feel is missing from our hearts and our souls. It's a mythological sense of seeking an adventure, to restore beauty as a term.
Yeah.
And then you've said, well, the way that our work has always been focused and what it continues to be focused on is the mechanism of relationship to do that.
Correct.
So
That's right.
you could be a student of the mechanism of architecture to inject love or aliveness or meaning or a community or beauty back on earth. You could be doing it through the mechanism of food or poetry. But
Mm-hmm.
here the focus is on the mechanism of relationship, like the relationship is the how or the way that we get to the ultimate why or end game,
Yes.
or never end game
Yes.
of restoring beauty. And as a third term, you've just put this thing on the table of desire. And the
Okay.
one thing, if I get this right, the one thing that in all your contemplations you've understood that women cannot resist is the true power and force of genuine desire.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that to be true. Yeah.
So we have something
There.
of a little bit of a flywheel here. There's true desire, the
Yeah.
mechanism of relationship, and this overall huge, lofty, human-wide direction of restoring beauty.
Well, our mechanism is the conversation. That's what we're steeped in. That's what we base our whole focus on. The philosophical pursuit of our hearts is, for you and for me, is based around the way we relate as men and women. And from that foundation, if we can restore that, then we restore some. I'm repeating myself, but we restore something great in the world that we've lost. So that's the idea. Like you said, somebody else might do it through the mechanism of food or architecture, which are probably, just equally valid. It's just not what I'm steeped in. So
Your,
yeah,
yeah, your route to restoring beauty for yourself and for the people that you know has been through the mechanism of relationship and understanding how you can shift that mechanism and make the relationships more powerful, harmonious, beautiful, conducive.
100%. That's for
Yeah.
sure the way I see it. Yeah, I see through that perspective. That's the glasses I wear as I look out.
So
Yeah.
I've studied with a lot of people over the years and couched myself in a number of different scenes where people would talk about the evolution of human consciousness and map this out and talk very specifically in these terms. But I don't think this, I haven't heard you talk about the evolution of consciousness. Just as an amalgam of words. Is that a poetic choice, or you don't think in these terms, or you think in some other
Well,
terms?
that's interesting because to say that there's an evolution in consciousness, we have to then extrapolate to the thought that if there's an evolution of consciousness, then the modern person like you is more aware than somebody 2,000 years ago, like, or 2,500 years ago, like Plato.
Hmm.
You have more ability, potential to, and for certain, and I think there's something to that, to be honest, because you, I think that our by being surrounded by the information and in the technology and the learning and the science and the the changes and knowledge of religions and all this kind of stuff, we have a child born today has an expansive potential, and maybe, for instance, the children that are born today, they have digital fingertips. Where I'm analog, you're analog, you're analog digital, I'm analog digital. The 90s is the generation that's incredible because the 90s they had the hard work ethic of the past, but they also had the
Yeah.
technology coming in, right? So we're on this divide, but the kids that are born today are more consciously developed, evolved, you could say, because they have something else that no one in history's ever had. This idea of digital DNA, and they have it automatic in their wiring, not something they learn like you did or me. It's in their wiring. They're raised with ones and zeros. So something's different in now. Maybe if Plato was born today or Aristotle or something, he would also be. Well, yeah, but it's interesting. I think there's an
Bionic
expansion
soul.
of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah. I I spent a lot of time in integral conversation, you could call it, where people are really charting out what consciousness has been in the past and what it is today. And I mean, what is consciousness? We can measure that in so many different ways, and it's certainly
Yeah.
not limited to
Consciousness.
one's cognitive capacity, like your mental
Mm-hmm.
ability to conceive or to reason or to outlook logic somebody who might be in dialectic with you. There's so much more to bring to the table.
Yeah.
One of the core arguments is, and they watch this by, this is based around a lot of absolute masters, Zen masters, and masters of different Indian traditions coming over to the West and then seeing how they got on. So if you're enlightened and you have pristine, perfect Buddha consciousness from having perfected a monk life in some East Asian country, and then you come over to the States and try and deal with the postmodern technological smorgasbord and the whole marketplace that's over there, spiritual marketplace that's over there, how do you do? Is the wisdom that you have absolute, and therefore does it always trump where the kind of evolving, tricky edge of society has come to, or does it fall short? And to imagine,
Ah.
let's say Socrates showed up in the midst of today, and he was a man of perfect virtue, but now he's thrust into civilization today with little more than his toga and maybe a stone. Some very primitive kind of book. How would he
What?
actually get on? Yeah, how would he actually get on, knowing that we have had 2,000 years of the evolution of ethics and the kind of societies that we live in nowadays,
Common
compared
law,
to
all these
kind
things,
of warring
Yeah.
kings and tyrants. Well, yeah, I mean, warring kings and tyrants are still going on, but by and large, there's been such an emancipation of many people that is unprecedented.
Yeah, we've we're building upon a stack of things that society and civilization learned, like Magna Carta, English common law. That's that our modern society is built upon. It's an evolution of society and civilization for sure, and technology. So the fundamental thing that I think that we're struggling with now in this real transitory time, and I mean the last say 300 years, where we're transitioning to a real technological, science-based focus, as opposed to that mystic that goes into the desert monastery and contemplates for the next 60 years. Um, we're based on religion. All of our societies and all our cities are based on some religion, Christianity or Buddhism or Sikhism, something. So, and our modern mind says, okay, we've evolved enough, we're modern enough, we're smart enough, intelligent now to realize that the universe is vast, where it's not the Earth is the center anymore, and there's entire, it's unknowable and it's expansive, and we have this knowledge, this consciousness, mathematics, everything. We've learned new things that doesn't jibe with, say, the early beliefs of Christianity, with the sun standing still, and various things like that, the Red Sea being parted, the Earth being only 6,000 years old, which is still a strong belief by Christians. So you're either believing, if you young men are going back to church nowadays, they're going back to Orthodox Church, Catholic Church, they're turning to religion. I'm seeing this as I talk to people. So if you go to a religion, say the Catholic religion, to become Catholic, you have to espouse everything that Catholicism is.
Catholicism.
You have to accept the miracles and the saints. You have to to become Catholic. And so there's this kind of thinking that I have to put aside my scientific mind so I can now tap back into the ancient words and the ancient scriptures that were written before. I have to put that aside so I can embrace this. Or I put all that religion nonsense aside, this fairy tale crap, because this is real and what we know now with science, etc. And there's these two camps. So my quest, the way I think about every single day, what I'm writing about right now is, how can we, with our evolved knowledge and consciousness about science, physics, all this kind of stuff, the things we know now, how can we love that and embrace it and go forward and bring in the beauty and the reverence and the transcendence that we used to know? How do we not disparage these ancient texts and ancient stories and ancient myths that created us, that gave us rituals, that gave us myths, that gave us guardrails, gave us structure, built our cities? How do we bring the best of that into this modern consciousness with AI, with physics, with what we know now, and blend it together as this new paradigm? That's my quest. That's what I think we need to strive for. Not throw that out. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as a big and clear question or inquiry, I hear you. Really big one. How does this pan out practically in your answering of it? Or what kind of syntheses or transcendences have you made of both? And how does that inform how you actually live or move through life? This
Well,
huge question, which could leave a lot of people frozen in the headlights. God, what do I do with this?
yeah, I wrote in the book, The Alabaster Girl, towards the end, I wrote something along the lines of, reconnect with the God of your youth. A lot of people listening to this were had some belief of God when they were children, imposed by their parents, or and then they threw it out and became atheists, for instance, right? And maybe they're right. I don't know, but you lose something. We lose something when we throw away that first love. we believed something. We maybe prayed when we were little boys, you know. I remember, I remember when I was a little boy, my family was, uh, I was born into the Seventh-day Adventist church. And when I was 3 years old, 4 years old, I was put in foster homes for 2 years. And I remember some of my earliest memories, because I don't remember anything about the church, Christianity, or anything when I was 4 or 5 years old in foster homes, but I remember having dreams that I would cry in my dreams because I thought I wasn't going to go to heaven when I was in foster home. I'm 4 or 5. This might be some of my earliest memories is crying,
Mm.
waking up crying because I thought I wasn't going to go to heaven. So there's something's there. Something, so it's the first love we had. And and maybe the religion was oppressive or angry, or your father was a tyrant, and so we run away from it. So I reject all that. But there was something good in it, something good. And somebody, I just did a podcast with a guy from India yesterday, and their religion, or their religions in India, are steeped in stories and characters and mythology and narratives. And when you cast that aside as having no value today, I mean, that's what Joseph Campbell was talking about. That's what Nietzsche talked about. That's what who was the other guy? Can't remember. But they talked about this as like the deficit of society is like throwing out all that narrative and stories and rituals. We don't pause anymore. We don't pray before our meals. We don't give thanks. We don't have gratitude. We just exist and fly through the day and sleep and watch TV and have insomnia and go back and try it again tomorrow. So we're missing something fundamental, and it has to be married together without throwing out modern science, which I'm the futurologist. I like it. If AI I like AI. I like all this new stuff that's coming down the pipe. I'm very much a technology guy, and I believe technology is part of our saving grace. It will help us. It's not a bad thing. If you looked at the if you ask people in the 19 say 20s to predict the future, and you see the drawings that they had, it was all these like spirals with like little Saturn rings around it, the cities, and a family of four with their arms around each other, looking at this beautiful, bright future, and flying cars and depictions, like the Jetsons type of thing.
Yeah,
And now,
yeah.
if you ask people to draw a picture of the future, it's zombies and apocalypse and wasteland and destruction. We used to have an optimistic look at the future. Now we have a very pessimistic look at the future, and I'm optimistic.
What would be your Jetsons of the 2020s and beyond? Is there an
Wow.
aesthetic that goes with that?
Well,
You just pop it in
I
Mid-Journey and see what pops up.
yeah, you
A
can.
utopian image of tomorrow, based on
Mid
everything
Journey
we now
captures
know.
it, and AI, I think, I'll say it like this: the internet is the first blush of that Jetsons like thing, and AI, I think, is the next. I think AI, this revolution in AI, is bigger than anybody thinks. And I don't necessarily, we're not going to go to AGI, which is general intelligence. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm telling you, it's changing the world already, and it's going to change the world in ways that people don't quite understand yet. They're nodding their head, but it's coming, man. And I like it. If AI destroys the world, at least I saw it. I was part of that. Hey, I'm crazy.
Going back to what you said about religion and reclaiming the gods of your youth,
Yes.
it sounds like your exploration of that religious slash traditional aspect of consciousness or of your own soul um, is something quite internal. And it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just making an assertion here to try and drive this forward. It sounds to me that you're seeking out what is truly the essence of religion, or that thing
Yes.
about the sublime, which it's like you're looking at the essence, but you're not including the entire vehicle
No.
of
No.
assumptions and worldview and practices and
Correct.
community shaping, which might be actually quite outdated if you take the full
That's
literal.
correct.
Okay.
I'm tossing out. For certain, there's parts that are just invented by man and made up. You're exactly right. What I'm talking about when I say reclaiming the God of youth is reclaiming the concept of contemplation and reverence, and the idea of the sacred, not necessarily the literal modern translations of um, and not all the doctrines and all the talking about the Catholic Church. There was a lot of edicts that a pope would say that people believe is he's the dude, and they would say that this is now the law of God, or the message from God. All I'm saying is it's the essence underneath it that we're looking for. The longing for beauty that is the stem of all religion. So I'm talking about the underpinnings of all religions, which is a longing for the transcendent. So our conversation is about the transcendent, not about specific religions, or go back to being a Seventh-day Adventist. It isn't that at all.
Yeah.
It is what galvanized those, what energized societies, what energized our bodies, our emotions, our intellect from those, what was good. And because we've tossed it away now. We don't have that sense of the sublime or the transcendent anymore. Those are words that are just like, those are old fashioned words. Not to you, not to me.
Of the migration back to religion that you're seeing right now, I'm curious, maybe if you feel like you're reclaiming Christianity or a religion and you're watching, you could put in the comments. I'd be quite interested to hear.
Yeah.
Um, of the people that you're seeing heading it towards religion, how many are heading in this same way of seeking out what is essential and energizing and life-giving versus how many are going kind of full rejection to modernity? I'm going to take on the full structure and practice of what this religion has been when it was at its zenith, even if some of that is outdated.
Well, if they're going back to churches, this migration back to religion, young people, because for the last 50 years they've been leaving churches in droves. Every
Yeah.
kid leaves their religion, right? And now they're trying to seek something out. There's a quietness in what they're trying to do. They're trying to find some solution to their existential angst that's dumped on them by society. They're trying to find comfort of their soul, trying to find meaning, a search for meaning for certain. And they're trying to find guardrails and structure that contains the chaos that we have nowadays. They want containment of the chaos, and religion has that, right? The structures of religion. So I would think that the primary force is not that they're going back to embracing every drop of that, every nuance of that religion, and every edict and every banged on your head credo, and here's the law of this religion. But more the essence is what they're looking for. Um, I think it's something like that they're looking for something that calls to that little boy or little girl in them again, not the actual details of the religion at all.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
So
there's nowhere else to turn. And Matt, sorry, Jordan. If you have a longing for spirituality, what are your options? An ancient religion, which you embrace now, or 1970s style New Age crystals and pyramids, and you know what I mean, and blowing smoke and stuff like that. You where do you, there's nothing else. You either pick an ancient religion, or say like Mormonism, which is 200 years old, or whatever, or you do New Agey stuff. What else is there? Why can't we have something? The way I think of it is this: 2,000 years ago, the birth of Christ, etc. 1,500 years ago, or 1,600, 1,400 years ago is Muhammad. In 1844, three major religions got started: Seventh-day Adventist, Mormonism, Baha'i. Three major religions. There's something happened in the year 1844. Something was in the, we went through a star cluster or something, or like asteroids blanketed the earth, or stardust or something. So why is that? Why is 2,000 years ago, or 1,500 years ago, or 200 years ago, the definitive time when the last message from God came to earth and this is the truth? Why not 2025? Why not? If there's an updated thought that created here's Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, and something like Mormonism or Seventh-day Adventist at the tail end of that, why not another thing? And who's to say? And so you could have a 2025 religion based on those things that starts now, that's like that in 30 years' time there's millions of followers. You could have it. I'm not saying to do that, but the cave painters of Lascaux, for instance, 30,000, 40,000 years ago, and they're painting these buffalo and their handprints and stuff like that. Were they trying to depict? Did they have a muse? Were they saying, "Hey, I'm going to paint on the wall today, Muse. Please bless me so I can do it right"? I don't know, man. I think these things a lot, but why is that definitive? That those years, if you talk to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, bless their heart, if you talk to Seventh-day Adventists, they believe that the truth was discovered in the 1800s. That it's been truthful, but now the real essence, the real truth, the Sabbath, etc., is real today, and they believe it with all their hearts, and it's a good thing, and they live good lives, and they're charitable, and the Adventist Charities is one of the greatest in the world. In every little village in the world is a Seventh-day Adventist church. In Brazil, where you were, everywhere, and their outreach is strong. But why? And they believe that that's the definitive word of God, that the final thing's been said, and the end times are coming. But maybe 2025, God comes and says, "Wait, here's here's another thing you didn't think of, and Thursday's the day of rest." I'm being blasphemous, I know, but because I do not want to disparage a religion, and I really have a lot of respect for somebody who really believes in. I don't think, "Oh, what a fool." I could never think that. I'm thinking there's an honorable thing in that person. He's trying to, my family came to Romania a couple months ago, and they're Seventh-day Adventists. We went to a Seventh-day Adventist church here in Romania, an English-speaking one, which I haven't been to in years. And there was a young man there, 22, 25 years old, and he played the guitar up front. He sang a song. And I talked to him after the church, and he's just this young guy he's Romanian, but he lived in the States for a while. Now he's back here in Romania, and he doesn't know anybody. He just moved here 2 months ago. He's starting out fresh in his job, and he was just a good guy. And he sang a song with such a heartfelt thing, such a heartfelt love of what he's doing, and hope that people would be ministered to by his song. And I think, well, how much respect do I have for that guy? I invited him to the New Year's Eve party, but he couldn't come. But I'm going to invite him. He lives here, he doesn't know anybody, and he's a cool guy, a young Christian guy. And I'm thinking, yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, because he believes something, and he's hopeful about something.
So with this, I want to keep us on track with the role of relationships in
Okay.
human consciousness, name of the episode. Um, as there is this migration, and I would imagine this is an individual self-searching inquiry into the role of some, or the possibility of some form of transcendence in our own private lives. And it sounds like people returning to Christianity are doing so quietly. They're doing so without
Yeah.
dismantling the intellectual ways of moving through life that they've accumulated in modernity. It doesn't. You're not talking about a fundamental let's burn all the skyscrapers we've built and go radically back to the land and, plow our way. No. So there is this turn towards religion and towards tradition in our individual lives, but also there is a big motion towards tradition in relationships. So
Yeah, family values.
how do we do relationships with each other? And I'm curious to chart out some of the possibilities of that and some of the drawbacks, because we did evolve out of human consciousness did evolve out of traditional relationships because of immense limitations. So I'm
Yeah,
curious, what is a value that we are bringing back and can bring back? What are potential mistakes that men and women might run into by reclaiming too ardently, let's say, a traditional model of how we do relationship today?
yeah. Well, I really do believe, like, I'm a conservative as a small c. I believe in conserving what has created us today. Trying to preserve certain things, right? Um, I really think that and it's my own interpretation. Every iteration and permutation now and combination of relationships is the modern thought on it. But I really do think that the family unit, which comprises a man and a woman, the father, the mother, and the children, and the father as the patriarch, which is a bad word, because the father is the one who gathers the children in the evening and says, "Tell me about your day, my beautiful children," leads and guides that. I think that is the ideal. It's been around for centuries, well, forever, and I still think that is the ideal paradigm we've ripped apart. We've ripped it apart completely. There's no gathering anymore. If there is a family, father, mother, children, they're all in their separate rooms on their separate iPhones and gadgets, and nobody comes together in communion and breaks bread together and prays over the meals together. Like I said, and it's the man's role to create that for his household, to come home from his whatever he's doing, and come home and announce and present and give an example to the children that this is. So I think that family traditional value now. There was something that's broken wide open. If I could just kind of speculate here, science comes along, the Enlightenment, the opening of our eyes, say, wait a minute, everything we've been thinking is that we're contained and it's not necessary, including families. So the 60s revolution, I mean, feminism, 150 years old, whatever, right? Suffrage and all that kind of stuff, the beginning of it, but feminism trying to get the idea that women can have their own voice and their own agency, which is a good thing because they've been, held down, suppressed for centuries. But it went in, it veered off into angry, harsh, vindictive, let's get revenge on men in a lot of ways. And then so that was broken open, and chaos enveloped the feminine world. Chaos. And on this men's side, you had the loss of meaning, loss of purpose, the loss of their the aggression against masculinity, and how toxic it is nowadays. You know, and it's a bad thing to be men and masculine and sexual and don't talk to women and be invading their space, etc. And so they went into the male version of feminism, which is men going their own way feel. You know what I mean? Like that really strong men's movements that are trying to get back the power from women and don't trust women and we have to protect ourselves. That's male feminism, male angry feminism, if that makes sense. And so we've broken open that family unit, and we're all feeling the angst of it right now. We're feeling the loss of that. That's my opinion on it.
Hmm.
So I'm very much one for reclaiming that those values. And what I'm seeing in the young people is they're saving themselves from marriage, quote unquote, and they are returning to family values. That's the punk ethos now. The graffiti spraying punk, nose pierced people that I was talking to in New York City are the ones that are saying religion, family values. We're rejecting all this chaos and openness. Interesting.
So
It's counterculture now to be conservative in that way.
when you were talking before about religion, the return to religion, one of the pieces was the essence, like the essential way of finding meaning and like a balm for a sense of existential angst. So the essential conversation with God, let's say. But you also talked about structure,
Yeah,
finding structure and guardrails for your
yeah,
own movement through life or your own way forward through life. Could you speak a little bit about what you see as essential in the intimate relationship or in the family unit? What is the central spirit or way of being that you kind of advocate or believe is most generative or sustaining for the
yeah,
family? And what specifically are the guardrails, which is, Zan, how do I do this?
yeah. It's the concept of worship, a worshipful spirit. What do we worship nowadays? To me, the worship of beauty is primary. Um, that's what I worship, which is to me God's voice. That's how it speaks to us through beauty. That's how we feel connected to anything. That's how we connect to our loved one through the beauty of their existence, the beauty of their smile to us, the I to thou. Um, and without that, we're devoid of something. So we're just existing. If we're in a relationship where we just tolerate each other, we roll our eyes at whatever, and we're not proud of each other, that kind of thing. Or we have a career that just is devoid of meaning. We just existing. We're starved in general. No, I think we're all starved for this sense of the worship of beauty, which is what we're drawn to. And I've always been saying for years that the longing for beauty that is in the heart of every man and woman is a universal across all cultures, religions, centuries. 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, a Buddhist, nowadays an atheist, a Muslim, a Christian, they all, underneath all of that legalities that they all have a longing for beauty. They're all drawn toward a sunset. Everyone looks at the sunset and marvels at it. We're drawn to it. We contemplate it. Beauty invites contemplation. That's why modern art, or sentimental art, kitsch, as Kundera called it, um, doesn't invite contemplation. You just look at it, flick, consume, You just nod your head. It doesn't make you pause. And so, practically speaking to young men and young women that might be listening to this, is I really, really am an advocate of pausing your life on a daily basis and taking stock of your life. Meditation. I've never meditated, but maybe it could be your meditation. I don't know how to meditate and clear my mind. My meditation is filling my mind with contemplative thoughts. I can't empty my brain, but to sit quietly every day on a daily basis, as I advocate in our membership. I teach guys in the membership to do the Amirati ritual, which is to take time every day with your notebook, with the stillness of you, and be still. The Bible says, in Psalms, be still and know that I am God. So you basically being still and saying, okay, at this time in my life, my age, at this location I am in this city I'm in right now, at this moment, pin the tail on the donkey of this pinpoint in space time of eternity that I'm now stuck here. What do I want and who am I as I have this life? So I think that on practical speaking, if anybody wants to know how to start to understand, or you'll never understand it, but start to head towards this kind of a life of mysticism and life that's like a narrative. Pause every day and start to contemplate. Aristotle said the highest form of activity is contemplation. So I think a daily pause, like we used to do. We used to have worship with our family. We used to pray before our meals. We used to have the concept of our daily devotions, where we'd get up in the morning and the first thing we do is do our daily devotions and then go about our day, plow the field or whatever we had to do. And we're missing something sublime out of that. And I mean sublime in the way it used to be termed, not in the way that, Burke and these guys redefined it, which I'm against. That's another thing.
One thing that comes to my mind, especially thinking about this more traditional, um, ritualistic, structured way of being together as a family and as a couple. I mean, I have interesting I'm in an interesting location in this conversation because one is I live in Bali, which is a very highly traditional and structured patriarchal society. And one of
Mm.
the beautiful things about the Balinese is they have their own calendar, and there are different ceremonies and structured worship throughout the year. Their calendar actually is of 212 days. So after 212 days, it
Mm.
rotates and you have another year. So a lot of these special ceremonies keep popping up again and again throughout the calendar year. Quite, the rotations of our year and the local year are a little bit different. And then you always are surprised when they have a ceremony because there was no forewarning. And there you are 1 hour in traffic and everyone's cut up the road and there's people walking down in all dressed in white. Um, and yet, living in Bali as a Westerner, it's the most one of the New Age capitals of the world, right? So
Yes.
structureless and ritualless people that come to Bali and almost forget. I virtually forget that Christmas Day is coming until December 23rd, and then it's like rush to the mall. Oh no, what are we going to eat, drink, and give each other as gifts? Kind of the rush of tradition forgotten all of a sudden blows up in our faces, and we have some reactive movement towards that. But it is quite interesting, this dynamic of opposites, and a lot of the New Age people are looking for the deep structure that the deep culture has preserved, and they fancy that, and that's part of the exoticism that Bali has over the seeking kind of Western psyche. And yet, spending a few years in a tradition conserving place, I have to admit that it's very boring
Hmm.
and also
Legalistic.
extremely stuck. Exactly. So when I think about tradition and conservatism, even with a small c, part of my question is, where's the evolution in this? When for
Ah,
so many years the desire to get out of the traditional ritualized home is, I am stifled. I am actually stifled
yeah,
by my father's own benevolence. I'm
that's right.
stifled from my mother's own lack of agency in the midst of this, and I need to go to find something. And I
Yeah,
think that starts off a liberal journey, which is like, who am I? How am
yeah,
I oppressed? How do I find a sense of authentic self in a culture that, yeah, you might ask me how my day was over dinner, but that, I don't feel the space to express all the unknown parts of me which are coming to the forth. So I'm
yeah,
curious how you see that, because part of my dis-ease with a return to traditional religion, or a traditional relationship is, this also was a huge constraint. What it conserved, it also constrained
uh-huh. That's right.
in the human condition.
I mean, some real staunch fundamentalists want to go back to the idea of, the Stepford wives type of, women with an apron,
Yeah,
uh, cooking you food and giving you a blowjob as on demand.
yeah,
And so I need to clarify that, because when I say that's why I'm trying to say you bring the beauty parts of conservatism and the religions and stuff. You bring that forth, but you don't throw out the idea that we're progressed and be progress. How can you be conservative and progressive at the same time? That's what I'm trying to say. That's my wonderment. That's what I'm curious about. And we're either one camp or the other. We're either conservative and return to religion, traditions, etc., or we everything goes fly open. Uh, we break down. That's the deconstructionist mentality of postmodernism, which is to destroy anything. It's easy, as Roger Scruton said, it's easy to destroy something, but it's very hard to build something to replace that. And modern deconstructionism doesn't give anything to replace it. Doesn't replace religion or family values with something. It doesn't offer anything. It just says, just rip it down and then let's go. Rip down the statues and don't put anything back in its place. So, yeah, the quest that we have with Ars Amrata, what we're trying to understand is how do we cast off the legalism and the restrictions and the holding down oppression of those religions and conservative values and family values and still have a progressive open mind. How do we marry them both together? And it's got to, in my opinion, there is a way. Now, practically speaking, I don't know how to, I can't elucidate that, but I can sure believe that if we start to worship beauty, that naturally becomes, we believe in reverence, we believe in the sacred, we believe in transcendence, something beyond us. We believe in consciousness as being something we don't understand, and it could be something that it surprises us one day. We figured out what, really is. And maybe there's aliens and maybe there's angels watching us. I don't know. But how do we marry what was good from family values, conservatism, traditional religions, etc., with the things we've learned, which are cool? Like that women don't have to be held down. And how do we embrace the new things that are coming down the pipe and be progressive and liberal at the same time? And I do think that if we turn our face toward beauty, I think that's the saving grace. I think that's what the answer to that is. What practically, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I'm spending the rest of my life trying to think along those lines. That's all.
So when I first went to, as kind of in and out of Romania for a couple of years when I first met you and became part of the team, and then I went over to the States and spent a good amount of time there, and just to kind of map out my thinking, I read a bit of, I was influenced for a while by David Data and then Ken Wilber and some of the integral world over there.
Right.
Who were really asking that question for a long time. And the people that, of the different speakers and figures that stayed with me over the long term, evolutionary relationships is kind of a buzzword that encompasses a few of these different thinkers and speakers and writers and so on. And they would have an idea that a relationship itself, a unit of two people, has the possibility to be evolutionary, as opposed to either regressive, or clearly no really wants to go backwards in a relationship,
No.
or as opposed to also being kind of static, but just kind of bobbling along wherever the wind takes it. There's a sense that a couple is thrusting forward towards greater consciousness.
Together.
In that
relationship.
Individually.
Yeah.
But that there is enough commitment in the relationship that the relationship itself becomes a greater motor for growth of consciousness than either of the two people could achieve alone.
100%. I mean, I wrote that in the Alabaster Girl, that there's you on your spiritual trajectory, you're the woman on the spiritual trajectory, and that individualism can never be melted away. I mean, like, to glom those two together and say we're one is not right. He has to be dedicated to something here. She's dedicated to her own spiritual side here. And the third thing up here is the relationship. And the relationship is something you feed and water. You have to nurture the relationship, and it can grow, and it becomes something that you both look at and wonder because it's growing over the years and years and years. The mistake is like mushing everything together and saying, well, I mean, women have to have their own. I think you need your own secrets. You need your
Hmm.
own social energy. You know, you need to have this autonomy still, so, and your own thinking thoughts and your own place. You know, Virginia Woolf talked about a room of one's own. You know, you need to have your sacred space that you can go to, that you migrate to, that is yours and yours alone, and not hers. And she needs the same thing. And so when you have this, you're both excited in curiosity. You know, we talk about um, follow your passion. What if we don't know what our passion is, and it changes from day to day? You know, so like it's a fool's game to try and what am I passionate about? That could be something I'm driven towards today, and tomorrow I'm like, well, wait a minute. And so instead, follow your bliss, as I talk about in the Alabaster Girl, and just stay curious. Curiosity will be your guide. Be curious all day long instead of passion. Be curious. And if he's curious about his life and she's curious about her life, and they have this relationship that they love, that they're nurturing, that will fulfill them too, then this is evolutionary. He's evolutionary, she's evolutionary. It's not static. It's not like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home to work and kids are whining about something again. I don't want to talk to her because she's pissed off about, this kind of thing. And everyone's rolling their
Nagging,
eyes,
yeah, yeah.
nagging.
So
Yeah.
in the psychology speak, you'd have two individual people that seem autonomous. We both have our autonomous lives and we make decisions for ourselves and for our own flourishing. But then we get into a relationship together and we second guess actually our individual drives and we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to hurt somebody else with our own autonomy. We don't want to do something wrong by making a decision she might not approve to.
Right.
And so all of a sudden we shave off pieces of our own autonomy and end up in a dependency or a mush where we've sacrificed so much of our own the true self that wants to evolve has been sacrificed on both ends. So you end up with a compromise, a giant compromise. And a lot of that compromise isn't even vocal. It's just, well, I think she won't like this, so I'll stop doing it. Or she'll be a bit unhappy if I do that workshop where
Yeah.
I'm doing things and there's other
Yeah.
women present, so I better stay at home. So it's not that we actually compromise for the other person. We might, but typically the compromising has its own weight of gravity and sinks the whole relationship down. So
Yep.
the idea, like you're saying, is like how can we be in a relationship but be two autonomous individuals making our own decisions for ourselves? Well, the more you do that, the more you end up in, well, actually, this relationship is not suiting me because I have this travel agenda that I'm going to do. And so maybe
Correct.
I'll see you in a year or in 2 years. And all of a sudden, you become both of you so individual that there's not enough glue or third entity to even have a sustaining relationship. So this is a phase a lot of people go through on their own individual journey where it's like, well, I can't really commit to anyone because I'm so committed to myself now. I'm not willing to sacrifice anything at all. And then you end up in a situation where there is no entity. It's just as I walk down my path, there are different lovers and women, and maybe I'll have four relationships for a period of time and see if that suits me and that gives me the growth that I'm looking for. But I'm not going to hold myself back for another. Never going to do that. If I did that before, I'm never going to do it again. And then at some point, I think there's a realization, which is the interdependent realization, which is we're both two individual people, but if we stay just doing what we individually want all the time without any sense of
Yeah.
realizing that we need we need a long-term partner in our life to give us some kind of sustenance. Like when you're in a traditional relationship, you need the rest of your family around there with you. You work together
Yeah.
as a unit, and it's based on a contract and an exchange of needs. You come back to that, and it's like, well, I actually can grow a lot more with you than I could do by myself.
Yeah. It's like, that's funny. I can't go out with you because then I have to break up with me. I can't commit to you. I have to break up with me.
I mean, I joined a Facebook group at one point, I think for a bit of a laugh, but there was it was kind of a digital nomad world traveler dating service.
Oh, wow.
And people would write posts on there saying, yeah, I'm a traveler and I want to find another traveler. And here is my itinerary for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
2 weeks in Lanzarote, then it's Bolivia for a month. Then I'm doing ayahuasca retreats for 3 months in a dieta, so I can't date then. And then it's like Nepal for hiking, and then I'll be in Bali for a week and a half and so on. If you're going to any of these places, maybe we can meet up. But there's no sense of, I would give up my personal self plan
Yeah.
to create something greater. And I think
Yeah.
this is part of the definitely the postmodern uh, kind of progressive soup that a lot of us are in and trying to get out of by turning to religion and other sources. Is that, God, if I just plan everything around what I personally want and my own personal growth, I'm just going to be this forever uh, nomad, starting off every new relationship again.
I'm taking a note because I want to remember something. Sorry, Jordan, I'm listening, but I want to remember
Right.
this because I want to write about this. The idea of compromise. I wrote about it a bit in the Alabaster Girl, but I want to expand on it because the idea, like you said, that if you're this individual and she's an individual, I think compromise is you said the word heavy. I think it is very much that. Compromise has no place. We should never compromise. Conscious choice is a beautiful thing. Compromise is a sin. To sacrifice something because, well, that's not beholden. That's not a loving embrace of yourself or of her. Um, but if you consciously choose, I was going to do this travel agenda, but I'm starting this unbeknownst to me or surprisingly to me. I'm with her, which surprises me. She came into my life as a surprise gift, and I really like it. And we're creating this relationship that's incipient and it's all new, and it's arriving. And I now have a conscious choice to make. Do I want to follow that agenda that I was going to be this individual guy, or do I want to consciously choose to incorporate maybe part of that and this? That's a beautiful thing. That's a good thing. That's not compromise. Compromise is giving up some part of your soul just to appease something else.
Yeah.
So compromise is wrong, but conscious choice to choose a relationship um, is a loving act. It's an act of loving kindness toward yourself and into her and to the relationship.
Because a lot of people have compromised before and then they declare, I'm going to be uncompromising with what I need and what I want. But that ends up being, I'm just going to follow around my own individualistic desire forever, afraid to come into another commitment
Correct.
because I fear that I'm going to shave off my soul again. But actually, when you're alone and you're just doing what you want and doing self planning and self goals, you never actually aspire or graduate to something that is more nourishing.
You're
So
not
there is,
open to something more nourishing because you're uncompromising. I'm not going to
yeah,
do it. No, I'm my way or the highway. And so you're not open to something that you could grow into that would nurture you and be part of your experience, which it could be, it's not open minded at all. And the other thing is totally compromising. So uncompromising, my way or the highway. I'm going to be alone forever because I don't want someone, that doesn't leave yourself open to growth. But the opposite of that is compromising, which sacrifices part of your heart and your soul and your spirit and your drive and neuters you to a degree because I'm going to be stuck with this and now, that's
and
not
then the
compromise.
and then the growth from that isn't meaningful because you don't have enough thrust to actually follow through on what you should
Yeah,
be doing.
you cut off your life force.